If people are dieting now more than ever before, then why are nearly 1 in 3 American adults overweight? Dr. Gundry, who's helped thousands lose weight and feel younger and healthier than ever, says most people are not getting enough fat-burning MCTs from their food. MCTs are a special kind of compound that instead of turning into fat when you consume it, turns into ketones, which is a chemical that breaks down the excess fat in your body. So, by getting more MCTs in your diet, you essentially flip a switch that puts your body in caloric bypass mode, which can flush out excess fat and calories. And he's created an easy way for you to activate caloric bypass right at home. It's called MCT Wellness. This powerful blend of fat-flushing MCT powders and antioxidant-rich polyphenols is designed to help you unlock your body's fat-burning, energy-producing potential. What's even better is that it's a delicious drink. I love how incredible it tastes. All you do is add a scoop to water, enjoy, and watch as you start feeling slimmer and more energized. So, if you want to experience a quick, easy, and effective way to melt pounds fast, go to GundryMD.com/energy and order right now to get up to 53% off your regular price order with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's GUNDRYMD.com/energy.
What if you could have a career where the opportunities are as vast as our nation, where it's not about mission statements, but a shared mission? At U.S. Customs and Border Protection, we go beyond to protect more than borders. From ship to shore, air to ground, cities to local communities, CBP agents and officers are keeping people safe. Join U.S. Customs and Border Protection and go beyond for something far greater than yourself. Learn more at cbp.gov/careers.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. New taproom now open at Sass Drive and Cameron in Regina. Well, welcome to a new exciting extravaganza encounter of the 3 Down Greencast with Joel Gasson and John Fraser, known as the Center God of podcasts.
I didn't know you were going to hit me with that. I love it.
That's why I didn't want to tell you. I'm like, I know where I'm opening with this. I just had to do this. And like the whole weekend I spent in Saskatoon, probably no one except maybe Devin Haru has any clue what we're talking about right now.
Oh,
but
it's fantastic.
This was, even though we curled for, 4 straight days, we played all right at times, we played very poorly at times. The highlight of the weekend actually happened in your basement, which is actually quite surprising. I guess I should rewind a little bit because we haven't podcasted in like 6 years.
That's fair. Does this make this season 3?
Yes, I believe so.
Woohoo!
Yeah. So last weekend, I went up to Saskatoon, curled in the city spiel with John and a couple of buddies of his. We came second in the prestigious H event, in case you were wondering on that one. That's the one you really want to win. So we were close. We were close.
That one led to free pizza. So
exactly.
Maybe our plan to lose our first 4 games was intentional the whole time.
Yes. That I don't think there's any question about that.
Clearly. It wasn't because I was absolutely shit-bombed on the Thursday night and couldn't even hold on to my broom while throwing anything above a draw weight. But
yes, the
totally
other thing,
fun.
the most interesting part of the weekend we'll get to in a second, but also we have revolutionized the world of curling with a new weight call, which is, of course, broom losing speed.
That's right. And actually, you know what? On Tuesday night after the men's, when Luke, our skip, and I didn't really want to be there a whole lot, we just threw a whole bunch of broom losing weight and threw a whole bunch of doubles and had a lot of fun. Not gonna lie, it was good.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I referenced off the top. we're gonna have to talk about this a little bit because this was this fascinating, and it was by far the highlight of the weekend. And we're done talking about this, you're going to want to go look this up on YouTube as well. So it was in between one of the games. It was on the Saturday. And you were flipping around the TV looking for something to watch. Wasn't really.
It was after our 8:30 in the morning game.
Yes.
We were, me, you, and your lovely wife were just hanging out in the basement, kind of recovering, waiting for our next game. And I'm like, I just got to find something to kick on. And the news was too depressing. So what did we find, Joel?
So the Youth Olympics were on CBC, kind of a bit of a highlight pack, different things here or there. And then just so happened then at that point that there was the curling came on, which was, I guess, for the Youth Olympic curling, it was mixed curling. And Canada was playing Japan in the quarterfinal, which we thought, okay, cool, yeah, this works. And then our minds were blown, and the world of broadcasting changed forever.
So there's this British commentator who clearly, if you know anything about curling, did not know a damn thing about curling.
And I really wish this guy said his name, because then I would have tried to track him down and bring him on the podcast.
Oh, we absolutely would have. And just asked, like, how did you end up in this role? Like, how did you? And it was comical because being curlers ourselves, you could tell, like, he was trying to do his best without knowing strategy of the game. And he seemed bewildered at one point when the Canadian lead throws a very nice tick shot. And he's just like, oh, she's missed and everybody's cheering. Look how cheeky she looks. Oh, blimey. And he didn't realize that that's actually what she was supposed to do. And then he must have been told by a producer, because he's like, oh, actually, you can just move the center guard over. Center guard was also his favorite thing to say. And it was just, picture your favorite, or picture any British soccer commentator that doesn't know a damn thing about curling, and put them in that role, because it was just, and it was amazing through the whole game. Like,
yes, spectacular. It was the stuff of legends.
Oh, it was so. I think one of the best moments is we were pretty white from curling in an 8:30 in the morning game, and we're just kind of like, the energy level was low, just kind of sitting, chilling, getting ready, and then out of nowhere, at like the second's first stone, he goes, "Someone has to win."
Because they were in an extra end at this point, too, which is also, they showed, like, the extra end, which is important information in the spot. But, yeah, in, like, the fifth stone in the end, the guy suddenly, for dramatic purposes, is like, someone has to win! Like, or he also said, first score wins! Like you could just score at any point in the end. You don't know until the end. It's, anyone can score at any point, and they can win. It was magical.
It really was, and you said it. You said the key word off that opening was encounter. Like, he just, like, he kept calling it just this dramatic encounter of two teams, and these children are so good in this encounter.
He said something like, these 8 colors have done everything they could today, and, like. Actually, I think the absolute, probably one of the best moments was when late in the end, I believe, Japan called a timeout, and it was just silence because he didn't have a clue what was going on.
Oh, no.
Couldn't explain it at all.
He's just like, and there's the coach, and the third, and here's some crowd. Like, oh, yeah, no telestrator. The poor guy didn't have a color commentator either, so nobody's saying,
like, really big picture. If someone in broadcasting for curling is going to figure this out. No offense to Vic Router, but we don't really need play-by-play in curling. Just give me a couple of analysts up there talking about what's going on. We can see what's going on pretty clearly once it's happening.
Yeah, but then we got to get rid of Vic.
Well, I mean, once he retires, like, I'm not going to force Vic out the door, but I mean, realistically speaking, once he retires, does there really need to be, like, a replacement? I don't know.
It's true. I think there maybe does, just because I think you still need, like, Rob Faulds does a really good job of it watching the Grand Slams, and Brian Mudryk as well too, when he does, like, the morning draws, because of course you and I are curling nuts and we end up watching every draw, where you almost, like, lead your hosts into, like, so Kathy Gauthier, why would you play that shot? Or so Kevin Martin, what's going on down there, right? You're right. You don't really need curling play-by-play, but I've heard booths that are too many analysts, and it's a bit like it's a bit of a cluster F. It's kind of like our weekend of debauchery. I was honestly, Joel, I wasn't even sure, and I'm glad I recovered because, of course, it was the Superb Owl last weekend and my work Christmas party.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely might be in the contention for the Golden Lampshade. At one point, sitting at the bar, I was talking about curling and decided to show off my Manitoba tuck technique.
With your special sliding stick?
with another term from the British guy. Everybody that likes curling just has to go watch this. All like 100 of you that downloaded like the 8N Nation, you got to go watch this guy.
It's on YouTube. You can find it. Trust us. Canada-Japan Youth Olympic quarterfinal. The entire game is there. You can relive it in its glory.
Mostly because we found it on Saturday night after we were done curling, and we were both pretty buzzed.
And in fairness, learning about this guy, I think, is what propelled us to get to the H event final. Had we not learned about this, we may have just lost out and not played at all on Sunday.
It's true. The best part was the Sunday morning quarterfinal. You and I constantly looking at each other going, Sintigad! It was fantastic. And that was the best curled game, I think, of the whole weekend. But,
absolutely.
So I'm at the Christmas party on Saturday. And I decided to pregame like I like to. Especially because drinks were like $7-8 a drink, and I knew they'd be... Actually, they weren't bad. They were Corona and Stella. But, so instead I pre-gamed with a whole bunch of cold brew Americano stouts and other Pile of Bones treats, and decided to show off my curling form at the bar at one point.
Of course you did.
Splitting the inseam of my pants wide open.
Yep, that sounds about right.
And at this point in the evening, I'm going... I am too drunk to care, and I don't want to leave yet because they haven't given out the door prizes. So there are some classic photo booth pictures of me showing off the inside of my leg throughout the entire evening, thinking, oh, this is fun. I'll photo booth. And they had a cool photo booth. You could like text the pictures to yourself. Well, then I look at one of the pictures and I go, view entire gallery. That's me with my pants split wide open and my leg up in the air, eh?
Lacey must have been really proud.
Lacey was in one of those pictures, also showing off the inside of her leg. That
went better for you than I expected.
And so did I. Not gonna lie, it went quite a bit better for me than expected. So, needless to say, my curling-inspired weekend has, I didn't think I'd be drinking again, and then I drank again, and then it was a Super Bowl, and yet here I am again, Joel, still pounding back from our great sponsor. Speaking of great sponsors, on top of Pile of Bones, holy shit, we drank a lot of free beer on the curling weekend. That was fantastic. Yeah,
so, we worked a few connections, not gonna lie on that one. So yes, before I left Regina, of course, our great sponsors of this here program, the Pile of Bones Brewing Company, hooked me up with a bunch of cold brew Americano stouts. I was able to swipe a few red ales as well. Which, fun fact, as I'm learning right now, if you have the willpower to do it, go buy yourself a 4-pack of red ale, and then just stash it somewhere in your house that's like cool and dry, like the basement, or just leave it in the fridge for like 3-4 months. Trust me. It gets even better. It gets even better. It's ridiculous. I have some stuff, John, this can I'm drinking from right now is actually from when you were here at the Heritage Classic, and it is just phenomenal right now.
Well, I think I made the same comment to you, and my can that I have already finished off was canned in January, so January the 8th, so just about a month ago. Yep. But same thing, like it's like the malty taste comes out just a little bit more when you wait.
Yes, so we obviously hooked. I obviously talked to our sponsors, and they hooked us up as they always do. Then apparently, because I talked on CBC, the guys at 9 Mile wanted to give us some beer, which were just outstanding as always. I've had some stuff from them, but not a whole lot really overall. And the one thing that really blew me away, and there was no fills of it, so I'm guessing it was a very small batch they made. They had a Sour Joe, which was like a sourdough starter beer, which was just,
it was so good because we tried. We had I had their New England IPA, which was delicious. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm bad at names, but if you go in there and ask for the New England IPA, they'll hook you up with that. But yeah, the sourdough starter was unbelievable. Big props to Adam and the team at 9 Mile hooking us up. I even for the Superb Owl last night, and I wanted to claim that I had any left, and I was going to pretend to drink that during the What's in Your Glass section. I didn't. I drank it all. Went and grabbed same thing. Nice big bottle at your Sobeys liquor store. If you're looking for 9 Mile, don't look for the cans. Look for the big old bottles if you're shopping at Sobeys Liquor, or go see them right on 22nd Street, which coincidentally, as you were pointing out before the podcast, I can now stop and see them on my way to my in-laws or my way home from the in-laws.
Or both, depending on how it goes.
I have no excuses not to stop and refill the cans I got. So yeah, that was so. Hey, Adam hooked us up at 9 Mile. Pile of Bones hooked us up like they always do, and then we even got more. We were greedy bastards. I loved it.
Yeah, so it helps to have friends in the industry. I decided to reach out to my buddy Mike Torrey, who just happens to be a rep in Saskatoon for the Parallel 49 Brewing Group. So he hooked us up with a few samples of some Trolley 5 stuff out of Calgary, which was also always quite delicious as always. So our curling may not have matched the quality of the beer, but we had very quality beer for the weekend, thanks to, of course, Pile of Bones 9 Mile and Parallel 49.
Which was fantastic because, and no offense, I never want to slam anybody local, but the entire spiel is sponsored by Great Western. So it's not like when you normally go to a curling club, you got to pick, right? It's not like you can say, oh, hey, you got some Blackbridge, you got... Maybe you just want a cold pint of 016, right? So our options were limited, and it was funny after the one game on Saturday night, which of course we were both teams, thankfully, were half in the bag for. I'm like, well, should we have some celebration drinks? And you're like, let's go to your house. It's full of beer.
We have like 3 flats of beer at the house. Come on.
And I went, oh shit, that's a good idea. So again, thank you to Jenny, your lovely wife, for driving, getting us home safe so we could enjoy in all of that. And our other teammates missed out dealing with being recently married and a dead car battery in his car. So that was.
Before we get onto football, and we promise we will talk about a little football on this podcast before it's done.
At some point.
One more shout out from the curling weekend, and that is to the bartender on Thursday night who graciously sold us Blackbridge IPA before our game on Thursday when she wasn't supposed to. So for her, she's the hero of the week.
She really was, and however, I think that led to me getting broom losing drunk because we were up there, and see, I hadn't told you this. I hadn't told you at any point that I'm like, yeah, great. They feed you all day Saturday. It's a ton of fun. It's a good time. You should come up. And you're like, yeah, I'm in. But I didn't tell you till we got to the first curling club. I'm like, yeah. So Great West sponsors it, so that's your only options. And first you had this look of heartbreak, and then you had this look where they actually black out. It's like, you know how when you go get smokes now, it's all behind glass and it's blacked out and stuff.
They did that to CN, which was interesting, but everywhere else they did, yeah.
Nah, the CN actually has come a long way. That's a nice little club these days. So they didn't black it out at the ground. And your eyes, keen eyes, you're like, huh, is that a Blackbridge IPA? And our bartender looks at us, and we look at her, and she looks at us, and we look at her, and she goes, I can probably put in a glass for you. I'm like, okay, you're my favorite person. So yeah, the awkward part was as people continue to show up, and they're like, I'll have what he's having. He'll have the original. And next thing you know, we're all drinking Blackbridge IPA, which I tipped her well, and then had to tip well again the other night as I was talking to Lacey's boss, who was also curling, and my hand talking got me in trouble, and I spilled a beer all over a waitress. So I definitely paid for it in tips that weekend. It's all right.
Yeah.
I redeemed myself with money.
Yes. Specifically pizza money.
Oh, yeah. Cuckoo's Pizza, too. How about, veteran maneuver. Okay, I'm normally disorganized, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the organizational skill it took me to not only time it so we had an Uber coming, but Skip the Dish was on the way to my house with Cuckoo's Pizza at the same time. We basically got in the house, took our shoes off, and Skip the Dishes was there with pizza.
What a time to be alive, eh?
No, it was terrific. I'm patting myself on the back for that one. That was well done by me as we drunkenly demolished an entire pizza in my basement.
Absolutely. So one guy, or at least a number of guys who are probably going to be able to afford good tips in the next little while could be anyone who's about to hit the open market in the CFL as we finally pivot towards football. And it's going to be, I don't know if it's really going to be that overly interesting of a CFL free agent season, as this has felt a little more kind of like a typical sort of CFL free agent season where a number of guys, we all saw the list when, every team, the list was released after the Grey Cup of all the guys that were going to be free agents this year. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, there's so many names on this list. I'm like, yeah, there's always a lot of names on this list.
Right.
3/4 of them probably have contracts in the drawer already. And I think it's safe to say about 3/4 of those guys already had contracts in the drawers already. The way it's going, especially here in Saskatchewan, where a lot of names have signed already, and interestingly enough, a lot of names have signed the 2-year deals, which which has happened in a few other places, but not across the board like you maybe would have expected. So clearly Jeremy O'Day is trying to build something here. He's trying to build a core of players going forward, which I think he and the fans can both appreciate. The fact that there are guys that are going to be here this year and next. It's probably a stretch to get a lot of guys beyond that, and I don't really think you need to sign anyone in the CFL beyond 2 years, quite frankly.
I would agree.
So it's not going to be overly interesting. I don't think there's going to be names out there. There's going to be some things that happened, and I know it's dumb for us to sit here as a website that likes to draw traffic for revenue purposes saying, I don't know if free agency is really going to be that interesting. But I mean, it's what it is. And, there still could be trades out there. And I think it's safe to say at this point the biggest fish out there is Willie Jefferson and what's going to happen to him. But for the Riders' perspective, I think they may have already landed their most important pending free agent as of the season ended, because before that it was, of course, Cody Fajardo. But now, the other day with the news that they had signed one linebacker, Cameron Judge, to a new 1-year extension. Obviously, Judge probably wants to get another year under his belt and take another shot at the NFL, you would think. That's probably why he signed for 1 year, which in his situation, being a damn good football player, just makes a ton of sense. But from the Rider perspective, especially with word of talks being kind of far apart between the Riders and Solomon Elimimian, getting Cam Judge under contract was absolutely vital, and so major props need to be given to Jeremy O'Day for getting it done.
No, absolutely. And so far away from the free agency window that there's no panic. Both sides weren't all of a sudden, dropping their offer or digging in or anything like that, or anything stupid that you see with negotiations from time to time. But to me, and we've talked lots about our love for Cam Judge on this podcast, if Fajardo was 1A to re-sign, Cam Judge was 1B.
Yeah.
Like, he's that important to this team. And not only because of how good of a football player he is, but because of his passport.
Yeah, when you have a Canadian that good at a spot outside of offensive line, and even when they are offensive line, you try to get them under contract. But especially if you find a ratio-breaking guy at a spot that isn't traditionally, a spot where you find a really, really good Canadian, you need to do everything you can to keep that guy. And that's pretty obvious what Cameron Judge is at this point. So that was a major move that had to get done, and it got done, so props to that. So the interesting thing is, and I have a piece that will show up on 3 Down Nation eventually, of, kind of looking at where the Riders may go in free agency and kind of what their priorities are. And I think the 2 major spots, and I think linebacker is still a spot of somewhat concern for them, just because basically now with Judge back in the fold, they do have at least one of the 3, but at one point before Cameron Judge resigned, they were looking at all 3 starting linebackers from last year not being on this roster, because, of course, Derek Moncrief is already signed in the NFL, and Solomon Elimimian and Cameron Judge were both set to become free agents. So I think there's still a concern there, because Sam linebacker is one of those spots that's hard to fill, and you have to fill it, and it takes such a special guy to play that spot really, really well. So that's probably the really biggest spot to watch for the Riders, not in free agency maybe, but just overall heading into a camp story is going to be who's going to fill that spot. And depending on what happens with the rest of the linebacker core, I mean, you can move Cam Judge back to Mac, so you either find a Will or you need to find a Mac, depending on how you want to move there. So I think that's kind of their key. That's kind of one of their core spots where they need to look. Yeah, and the other spot where they just kind of need to figure out what they're doing, I don't know if they necessarily need to make big free agent splashes in it, is at receiver, where both Naaman Roosevelt, obviously a really solid possession guy still, a guy who I believe the Riders should target to bring back, just because I think he brings that veteran savvy and reliability to the receiving core. Now, obviously, him and Fajardo worked really well at that. And Shaq Evans are both set to be free agents. You expect Jordan Williams-Lambert to be better next year, as are also the Canadian kids that they drafted last year. So those are the 2 kind of spots where I'm looking and saying, okay, this is kind of the major holes on this roster right now, or potential major holes on this roster. And over the next month or so, we're kind of going to learn how they're going to fill it.
Well, and the funny thing is, too, with receiver, I think they'll get it done with Shaq Evans. You can tell one thing that Jeremy O'Day has proven to be very good at is focus in on a guy based on importance and then move to the next guy. Mm-hmm. He focused in, he got Fajardo done well in advance, boom, he's in the bag. He's focused in, he's got Judge done before free agency open, boom, is in the bag. You'd have to think Solomon Elimimian is maybe that next guy they're looking at, but we've got reports on 3 Down Nation saying that they are quite far apart. Mm-hmm. If it's not Saul, it's probably Shaq Evans. You'd almost have I don't think at this point, and this isn't a slam on him as a football player, but with what Naaman Roosevelt brings to the table these days as a veteran guy, I don't see another team really going after him too hard.
No, he's one of those guys that if he does get to free agency, is probably still there in day 2 and 3 unless someone's really desperate for some help.
Well, or somebody really desperate for some leadership. So, yeah. It looks as though, and I think it was the guys at Piffles to break it first, and then I know it was also confirmed or at least looked at by some of the other staff members on 3 Down Nation, that it looks like Williams-Lambert has restructured his deal. So that's also been quietly done by Saskatchewan. But again, when you have Cam Judge, and this all goes back to, when you have Cam Judge in that spot, you have a Canadian linebacker at a traditionally American position. I don't want to say it's easy to find good American receivers, but it's easier to find good American receivers than just about any other position on the field, right? I mean,
it is one of those spots that, relatively speaking, it's easy to find.
For some reason, we didn't know who Shaq Evans was 2 years ago, and now at least from some of the appearances and some of the things he's saying in the offseason, it looks like Kenny Stafford might be a bigger part of this offense than he was when he was acquired by the Riders.
Well, he couldn't get many. He couldn't have a smaller role than he had last year. So.
Well, that's absolutely fair, right? And that's kind of a guy that he just kind of got lost in the ratio shuffle when he came over. Mm-hmm. But he's a guy that's basically been out there going, "Hey, I exist. I'm here, everybody," and I'm
Kenny Stafford. I exist. They work.
Exactly. I almost feel like, or it's like the Verizon guy. Hey, I'm Kenny Stafford. Can you hear me now? I can catch football now. I can catch football now. And that's a guy that if they do let Roosevelt walk let's face it,
he's probably more likely to fill the Arsenault spot at this point.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Veteran guy that comes on out there, and dare I say he would probably be better than Arsenault with the Arsenault spot, who, it looks like the Manny show might have jumped the shark.
It's in reruns now, yeah.
Yeah, we have jumped the shark. We are in the seasons after that. We are in the last couple seasons of Lost. We're the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones for him. He's still there. He's still got the name. People are still following along. He's just not the same impact.
The Walking Dead that's still going for some reason, even though no one's watched since season 3, 4.
Like what? You mean the show that is literally the same show every damn season? Hey, much, here's a place. Oh shit, there's people here. They're bad. Oh no, let's fight the bad people. Oh no, somebody died. Hey, we found new people. Oh shit, there's a place. Oh shit, there's bad people in it. Hey, guess what? We're gonna fight them, and somebody's gonna die. And that's what's going on to season 3.
I think I touched a nerve on that one.
Yeah, you did. I love zombie shit. I love things like it had so much potential. Zombies and post-apocalyptic. You're basically barking right up my alley. My favorite video game of all time is Fallout, and you just turned it in to the days of our lives with the occasional zombie appearance when it's convenient to kill somebody off.
Okay. Good to know. Note to self, if you really want to get John going, compare something to The Walking Dead. Good to know.
Put that in your notebook into things that randomly makes Fraser aggressively angry.
Yeah, apparently. So yeah, the interesting thing too, I think, that could happen in free agency, I've heard some rumblings, nothing super concrete, so I haven't really written about it yet. I'm hearing the Riders might not be too interested in re-signing Micah Johnson, which is interesting to me because I think he got a bit of a bad rap for how he played last year here because everyone was so mesmerized by his sack numbers the year before. But you notice when he didn't play. And when a defensive tackle is out of the lineup and you notice, that means he's generally doing a pretty good job when he's in there.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And I get it. Like, there's salary cap implications and all that. He was probably getting paid too much, and maybe things for some whatever reason, and a lot of different reasons. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't re-sign him. I just think he played better than probably most people gave him credit for last year. So it is kind of interesting that it seems like they're just saying, like, no, I think we're good this year.
Well, especially too with him. It reminds me a little bit of Doug Brown, right? Mm-hmm. If you ever go back and look at Doug Brown's stats in Winnipeg, they don't jump out off the page at you.
No.
And that's because he was drawing so much attention, and Micah Johnson is doing exactly that. And the Riders have had, great depth of defensive ends, but I think, Micah Johnson was a big part of that defense last year. And if you watch it and you watch, drawing so much attention between, running backs getting involved and two offensive linemen getting involved, like, you're right. If they can afford it, he's a guy they need to re-sign. And again, one of these guys that is hard to replace.
Yeah, so I don't know. Obviously, we don't know what the plan is at this point, but that'll be an interesting spot to watch revolve, because we've seen them make this decision before when Keith Shulligan went to Ottawa in the expansion draft. Now, that was a ratio flip that they did also for cap reasons. This is not likely to be a ratio flip, but there is a scenario where they could go with Zach Evans and McKenna Henry at defensive tackle if they think he's up to being a starter. To Henry's credit, despite all the dumb penalties he took early in the season, he did progress throughout the year and became a pretty good defensive tackle.
Yes.
I don't know if they go that route. I don't know if they should go that route. They can obviously find cheaper American defensive tackles. They exist. Maybe there's a guy on their neg list they're really high on. I don't know. This is all possibilities, but it's an interesting one considering what a big push and splash they made with Micah last year, just to be like, nah, I think we're good this year. And it's really interesting in the big picture that you could look at basically the veterans they brought in last year. Micah Johnson, Manny Arsenault, and Solomon Elimimian could all not be on this team this year. In a year when generally you kind of want those guys around in a Grey Cup push, like when they brought in G. Roy Simon during a Grey Cup push. So, I don't know. Maybe it was just last year Jeremy O'Day said, okay, I needed some veteran guys in here while I rebuild what we're doing behind the scenes and what we're doing scouting-wise and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now he wants to put his system in place. That could be entirely possible. And I think that's not that's a smart theory to try. That's a way to get through a year because of kind of the slowest, he's behind the eight ball when he started last year.
Yeah, no, he certainly was. And I mean, we both said last year was not the year that they expected to contend. It was the going into this year when you're hosting the Grey Cup. So I do find it interesting and optimistic too, because you and I, dating back to Chris Jones, have always talked about the fact that this team wants to be this mark of longevity. They want to be the next Calgary Stampeders, even to a lesser extent, Winnipeg, that has just become remarkably consistent. And I think this is a sign that they're not just like going all in and trading everything and re-signing everybody and damn the salary cap and holding roster spots for potential young guys like they did back in 2013. It's kind of nice to see that it looks as though there is a long-term vision. Now, I do fully anticipate them to get more veteran after free agency opens. You'd have to expect it. And one guy I think that they should go all in on if they are going to slim back in another couple of these spots, because let's face it, the Cody Fajardo contract, as I said before, essentially gives you one free elite level player compared to Edmonton, Calgary, BC playing their quarterbacks all this money.
Yeah.
Is it crazy to think Willie Jefferson maybe comes back on a Grey Cup pursuit season?
I think so. I think the fact that they already have Charleston Hughes and AC Leonard signed, I think kind of sends that theory down the road. I don't see it happening. There's been some like Toronto, Ottawa, Winnipeg, these places have already floated out that there could be interest in Willie Jefferson there. I think that's going to turn into a bidding war that Jeremy O'Day's probably not really going to have much of a chance at, considering the money he's already got locked up on the ends. Right.
I'm just trying to be optimistic because I am.
If they could somehow swing it, would be amazing. I don't know how you make it work with two elite defensive ends and one guy who's pretty darn good.
Well, and because here's the other thing that I always do now when we record is I generally watch the replay of this year's Grey Cup. It's just.
Well, the one thing that has floated around Twitter, I don't know if you've seen, Mike of Podski Wee Wee does not want Willie Jefferson going east because of that Grey Cup game. So now everyone's saying he should go sign in Toronto or Ottawa and say he signed to terrorize Mike.
That would be, and if that happens and Josh Smith doesn't drop a "by God, that's Willie Jefferson's music" on Podski Wee Wee, Josh Smith is cut out of all mentions of this podcast for the rest of the season.
No, this will be a Josh Smith free zone 100%.
Yes, that'll be no more Josh, all because you didn't say "by God, that is Willie Jefferson's music."
But one more thing on Willie Jefferson, because he's clearly like the big fish out there this free agency period, because there's no elite quarterback, especially, Matt Nichols is signing in Toronto, it looks like, or there's a good chance of that. Not really that there's much of a surprise. It's really the only job that's open.
Right.
But when it comes to Willie Jefferson, that him signing out east or going somewhere else fits in with my theory and my rule that should exist, that I think every fan base in the CFL should get to experience him on their team once.
Yes.
Because he is that much of a joy to watch. You really don't appreciate it until he's on the team that you are watching. Trust me. Willie Jefferson is worth every penny. And if I had to pay for season tickets in a city and Willie Jefferson was on that team, I would gladly pay every dime.
Well, and you're absolutely right with that, Joel. And he is that much fun to watch as I, watch the highlights of the Grey Cup yet again. With Willie Jefferson just dominating and balling out, right? And it's funny, you mentioned the Matt Nichols thing.
Mm-hmm.
And with Toronto, what I found interesting today is kind of a non-rider aside, talking about the league as a whole.
Yep.
And again, back to our point that I think this is just going to be a boring free agent season compared to last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that the report breaks today from, of course, Dunk Bomb, that basically comes out and says, McLeod Bethel-Thompson's in, but he only is back in Toronto because he has certain guarantees that he's going to be the starting quarterback. And then a couple hours later, all of a sudden, Matt Nichols, starting caliber quarterback in the CFL, pending his arm isn't held on with duct tape and hope, signs in Toronto. So I just, to me, that is so Toronto to sign your guy and maybe give him assurances that he's your guy, and then go out and sign another guy. It was just, I don't know. I found it weird.
Despite what they may or may not have told McLeod Bethel-Thompson, or maybe what he's trying to tell himself to get him hyped up for what is clearly going to be the only really interesting battle in training camp at this point across the CFL that has any sort of appeal outside of your team's market, is going to be Matt Nichols and McLeod Bethel-Thompson, which just sounds weird on so many levels. Battle of the century! Matt Nichols and McLeod Bethel-Thompson. Get your tickets now.
I mean, not quite as weird. Not quite as weird as Chris Strevler, NFL quarterback.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in a second, but for Toronto, this works on so many levels. I think, obviously, McLeod Bethel-Thompson, I think, has potential there. He led the league in touchdown passes last year. There's something there if he gets the right coaching, but you need that experience with him as well. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think it wouldn't have been a horrible idea for Ottawa to try to sign Matt Nichols, too.
That's what I thought.
To get behind Arbuckle if they had room for it, but Arbuckle wanted Fajardo money, basically, so that makes it a little tougher to get a Matt Nichols at backup, but there could be other options for them, I guess, still to have an experienced guy behind Arbuckle, because like Fajardo was, and still kind of is, the sample size is kind of small on him.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, but it surprises me that, McLeod Bethel-Thompson probably has to be close to Fajardo money.
Maybe,
right?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I haven't seen. We'll wait for Dunk. He'll probably tell us tomorrow.
Yeah, knowing us, we're going to record this. We're going to put it out there. And, okay, Dunk, if you're listening, just make her relax. Just hold off on dropping the salary information for Nick Arbuckle just for 2 days. Okay? Or pardon me, McLeod Bethel-Thompson.
Yes, we already know Arbuckle's money. Yeah.
Yeah, we do, because Dunk is that good. But it just, you're right. Like everybody else, even if you think in Hamilton, if you think Dane Evans was a flash in the pan last year, well, Jeremiah Mazzoli's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even in Toronto, as if McLeod Bethel-Thompson is still remarkably inconsistent, you have one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the CFL the past couple of years in Matt Nichols now backing him up. If Nick Arbuckle turns out to be flash in the pan, almost right back to where they were and starting quarterback of the Fort McMurray whatevers in the Alberta Football League.
Yeah. Well, one guy they don't have the option of signing, of course, you mentioned it, is Chris Strevler. And I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around this, even though we'll get into it for a second. I think he actually has a very good shot at sticking. Chris Strevler is signed in the NFL. He is signed with the Arizona Cardinals. And had you told me 2 years ago, after his first couple of games with the Blue Bombers, when he started for injured Matt Nichols, you had told me this guy is going to be in the NFL, I would have said you're crazy. And I still think the whole
mistakes.
You have, and I'm just saying you and like the general you, not necessarily just you.
Fair, but it sounds like something I would say.
It does sound like something you would say, but it is still strange. I'm still having a hard time wrapping my head around this, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And what was the description that you said about him before we recorded that I was going to steal from you if you didn't use?
Okay, so I was talking with a friend of the show, Dan Plaster, who I believe is going to fill in for you next week while you are off getting sunburnt in Mexico.
I like that you threw in the sunburnt, not enjoying myself, relaxing, and drinking mojitos all day.
I gotta find something negative about it, right?
That's fair. If I was you, I would do the same thing. If I was buggering off to a 4.5-star resort in Mexico.
Yes. So Dan Plaster probably going to fill in next week as we talk a little bit about whatever happens in free agency. I said to him, because we were talking about Strevler going there, blah, 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 blah. I said, Strevler is like cool Tebow. More boozing, less Jesus. And he's like Tebow in some ways, that he's not really a great quarterback, but he's now like Tebow in a lot of ways because he's actually willing to be more than a quarterback, as we've seen. And this is where I get to the point why I think Chris Strevler is probably actually going to stick in the NFL. Because unlike all these other guys, and we're seeing a number of them signing down in the NFL this year, and I feel great for those guys. I never blame any of them for taking their shot. A lot of them don't really get a fair shake for a lot of political reasons in the NFL. That's just what it is, unfortunately. But Chris Strevler is not the guy that you sign, especially if you're a team with Kyler Murray, is not a guy that you sign to compete for any kind of significant position on your football team. He is a guy that you are bringing in for a very specific role because you think he can do something specific that will help your team. So that is why I believe Chris Strevler will stick in the NFL.
Well, and I honestly believe that Chris Strevler, if those that listen that don't follow the NFL very closely, there's a guy by the name of Taysom Hill in New Orleans. Obviously, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and Drew Brees plays in New Orleans. He's not taking his job anytime soon, but he lines up at tight end.
Well, maybe.
He lines up at receiver. He lines up at quarterback sometimes. He's lined up at running back. He plays special teams, right? He does so much stuff and he's such a threat no matter where he goes, that he's unique in his talents. And I think...
Well, Taysom Hill is the reason why Chris Strevler has a shot in the NFL.
Oh, 100% he does, because I think Chris Strevler can do certain things better than Taysom Hill. I think he's bigger. I think he's more built to take some of the NFL pounding, and he is surprisingly fast for a big guy. Now, Hill... We don't know,
Hill can throw a football better. I think Hill can probably run a route better. Way better. Things like that, yeah.
But again, a guy like Chris Strevler, to a degree, can learn to run a route. And... Yes.
If you could teach offensive linemen to run a route, then I guess you can teach Chris Strevler to run a route.
Exactly, and that Chris Strevler strikes me as the kind of guy that is going to try to do it. I think if any Arizona Cardinals fan researches, just Googles him and sees his celebration in Winnipeg, the fur coat, the cigar, and kicking the doors open, they're going to go ahead and love this guy and love. And Chris Strevler's the kind of guy I can definitely see playing special teams. He'll do anything to stick around in the NFL. And it's fascinating to me, too, that Arizona's coach is a former Winnipeg Blue Bombers quarterback. So,
who isn't a former Winnipeg Blue Bombers quarterback?
That's fair. I might even be. I'm a former Lecky and Associates Bombers quarterback. That was the
Which
name
is like some kind of farm team? That was the
name of our flag football team in Lloydminster.
Oh, yeah.
7-2 as a starter. That's right. I was a game manager. I was Matt
QB
Nichols.
wins, baby.
That's right. Great stat. Regardless, it's just I could see, that his coach has watched what he did in the CFL, and he's going to get a chance to actually make an impact. And you're right. Like, the funniest take on Twitter was everybody going, "Oh, Strevler's the quarterback in the NFL, and Bo Levi Mitchell isn't." Like, no, Bo saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, Bo's not dumb. He knew he was going to go down there. If he did, he would sign somewhere, and he'd have to compete against guys that are not as good as quarterbacks than him, but are draft picks of a team. So he has to be, heads and tails so much better than them to even have a shot, because the team doesn't want to look stupid cutting a draft pick over some other guy.
Exactly. Meanwhile, you can bring in Chris Strevler, run the unique packages. If it doesn't work, he'll be back in Canada in a year or two. I mean, it's a low risk.
It's low risk, and it's really smart by Kingsbury, because now he can run out some of those packages. He can take some of those run plays off Kyler Murray and put those hits on Chris Strevler instead.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it was actually my good friend Mike Tornopolsky who said Kyler Murray and Chris Strevler, Arizona might just run the single wing. I mean, you might just see cloud of dirt and
triple
4
option,
yards
baby.
gained. Yeah.
Army football at the NFL level. Let's go!
Hardy Fiber Cement Siding is proven to withstand water, pests, and fire better than wood-based siding. And it looks better while doing it. Hardy Siding has been chosen for 10 million homes and counting. See the proof at jameshardy.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.